18th, which is a Tuesday. Grateful for your time and attendance. We're going to get started with a video from Mr. Phil Lane, which is always important to remember. So for those of you that don't know, he's a hereditary chief. Wonderful man. We've worked with him since 2005, and I'm just grateful that he's still here with us.
Mitakiepi, my very, very beloved relatives of our human family. We live in a corrupt global system.
But are we a part of it?
Are we part of it? Are we part of it?
No.
No.
No. No. We've been very patient as the few control resources we all need. The question is, can we change it?
We've all heard the voices shouting, "It's not your turn."
Our heart aches to do more, to be more. But time is running out.
Time is running out.
Time is running out.
We start by completely trusting we can make a difference. Because with one heart and one mind and many bodies, in unity, we can do anything.
Together we must take unprecedented, unified action.
And transform the world around us.
No matter how challenging that may be.
Individual sovereignty, freedom, love, and justice.
Unite us all.
Because there are indigenous-led technologies coming.
That gives us all the opportunity to stand,
To give, to love.
That's what responsible technology should do.
If you are one of those who believe it's your turn,
stand together.
Rise up.
everyone.
Everywhere.
You as a rising generation.
I don't know about you, but I don't ever get sick of that. That's for sure. I wonder how he's doing. Today is the 13th of December. We're almost to the end of 2022. I think we're in the 51st week, or at least next week will be. Today we're accompanied by Wally, L, myself. Terrence may join us a little later. If you have questions, feel free to direct it to these individuals. We're actually streaming on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, a couple different channels there, and then also on Clear One. We're grateful for those that are joining us to seek to understand and then be understood. There's no particular legal topics other than this is a private membership association, and the things we talk about may be forward-looking, some crazy topics, but they're really simple. And when it all comes down to it, it's basically giving identity back to the individual by using decentralization, a simple model that connects a phone or access devices. It's not just a phone, but it could also be a PC, a tablet, a laptop, devices like these. So laptops, which some of you, this may be new to. Tablets may be new to. But basically primarily focusing on access devices and the phone world connecting into a decentralized storage ecosystem. You can join at rippleeffects.clear.events to ask live questions. We're going to primarily spend 30 minutes going over any kind of advancements over this last week, keeping everybody apprised, and then also go through any kind of live questions that you may have. It's a crazy time of year. I don't know about in your neck of the wood, but it's been a full year. Two Ripple Effects ago, when I announced the date, I announced it as 2021, and it feels like one of those years where it's just literally been gone, so to speak. So again, if you have questions, feel free to log into rippleeffect.clear.events. Grateful for those that are always there asking smart, wise questions. We're moved over to technologies that are off of things like Google. And when I say Google, I'm specifically talking about Chrome. So if you notice, this is actually a web browser, which is built off of Chromium, but it's not managed by the Chrome ecosystems. Over time, you may end up seeing that systems that are managing the actual browsers will start locking down certain things. And I'm grateful to be able to be, I would say 90% moved off of those centralized systems onto a platform that literally you can put the user ID, and this is where we're focusing our time, how you actually log into not only your phone with ClearWeb. I'll actually pull up a website on ClearUnited.com. If you go to products, you can see here how ClearWeb basically runs on multiple different devices, kind of like the devices I held up, from an access point, or I should say from a desktop to a tablet to a phone type device. This spans across x86 based systems as well as ARM based systems. So that's basically like, for instance, this is an ARM system, this tablet, as well as a phone. These are all ARM based systems. And this is an x86 based system. So there's different operating systems that actually span it. They all run ClearOS mobile or ClearOS server. There's yeah, so I won't spend a lot of time there, but know that ClearWeb getting matured with ClearID and the credentials logging in. So that basically means that you can actually start logging in off of your devices based upon a fingerprint. So we're getting closer to that. If you want to see a video on that, I'll share it here. It's a really cool technology.
You are unique. One of a kind. One in a million. In a billion. In a world full of imitation, fakes, and duplicates. A world of numbers, not names. Shouldn't you remain an original? And shouldn't that original you be yours? You are yourself. One should never be forced to do anything without consent. You're not a commodity to be bought and sold by who knows what or who. Shouldn't you be in control? And shouldn't your online identity be yours? You own you. No government, no company, no conglomerate of corporations should ever be able to have or take your identity, your most essential you. Be you. Own you. Become clear.
This ClearID is actually an extension that's built into the browsers. It particularly stops a lot of the profiling. Hopefully this will close. Oh no. No. That's not good.
You are unique. One of a kind. One in a million. In a billion.
There we go. Awesome. There's actually a bug in that video. It's not the browser, it's the actual video. Wally, could we take a task for Team India to work on that? I'm going to pull open the ramifications that actually hit this last week as a byproduct of the individual owning their own identity. This is almost a $400 million lawsuit that Google has been slapped with this week based upon taking data that they said they weren't taking. It's actually a location type data. When you have one application that says they're not tracking it, they actually have another setting inside of another application that is tracking it. So this is a full-blown lawsuit. Today is the 13th, so you can actually see here, this is within the last month, but this actual lawsuit was actually completed and went through this last week. So massive update there. And really what it means is they would rather violate basic rights and get slapped and then get a demerit than basically do what's right out of the gate. It's not like they didn't know what's going on. Let me see if I can find a more recent article, because I saw some ones today that were just...
Hey, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Terrence, mate. Good morning. Just an update from the fascist country now known as Australia. They have legislation coming into play at the moment. It's before the Parliament that you require 100 points of ID just to have a social media account in Australia. And that, might I suggest, will be the future model for the social credit score.
Yeah, I actually think Australia will be one of the places that it gets rolled out first, primarily. And I'm actually going to pull open another application. That's 100 points of ID, huh?
Yeah, so KYC for a social media account.
Is there a link that you can share on that we can kind of explore?
Yeah, I will. And Yes.
While you're
And,
looking that up, I'd like to share something. This is actually part of the rollout. So for instance, in the digital world, there's a notary process. Notice how this actually works. So you have someone that comes on. This was actually earlier today. I'm going to see if I can pull open the digital notary. Still got you on audio there. Oh, it's not going to pull up in this browser. Let's see if I can grab it in a different one real fast. It's kind of hard because we're juggling different technologies and different development cycles and all that fun stuff. So you can kind of see here, actually I can share this. So you can see how this notary process will actually enable people to use technology just like how we're connected on Clear One, where people can come together and actually validate that identity. But the real difference is, can you validate the identity based upon decentralized tools and technologies? That is what's to be determined. And so things just like what we kind of saw here. So where a user logs in, they can go through a process, they can pick their signature. Let me see if I can find another one that may have some more data. And it's really, you basically come through and collaborate real time, so to speak. So it's literally a process where a digital notary can actually, I'm getting some feedback there. A digital notary can actually come in and validate what you're talking about, Terrence, with 100 points of ID, and actually enable the individual to validate their ID. Imagine, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is there's currently two models based around that. These are not hypotheticals, these are real. So for instance, notary.com and notarylive.com are two different technologies that are currently leading that ecosystem. A couple things they don't do is around cryptography. So they don't really do anything that validates who an individual is, except for looking. I love that, Karen. Did you have something you wanted to say, Karen? You're good if you want to. It's a good song. We'll play it at the end, if that's okay. Just have it loaded up, or send me a link to it. Just share it in the chats. That's a good example of what's getting locked down. Like, people don't have the ability even to share tunes. Like, when you look at copyright laws, when you look at the ability, for instance, a big portion of the reason Apple got into the tunes industry was from Hollywood. And when you start looking at the copyright laws and all these other things, and I'm not talking people shouldn't share stuff that's not appropriate, but it's inside of certain ecosystems that are not public is a different conversation. So back to this notary topic. 40 to 50 sessions a day. You grab them as you want. You work as a contractor. You work when you want, how you want. Each session is about $5 to $25 per session. So if you do the math, between 40 to 50 sessions, and that's an average income about $400 to $500 per day. If out of the 365 days, you work 300 days, that's about 120,000 US dollars that the current markets between those two companies basically are paying. Now imagine a jurisdiction or a part of the world where $120,000, for instance, the average income for a US citizen, can anybody take a guess what it is? Without Googling it, it is, or using DuckDuckGo, it is $66,000 as of 2 years ago. So $66,000 is the average income for a US citizen. Imagine this type of notary service where people can actually live in the comfort of maybe freedom, maybe serenity, maybe where their roots are from, but they can drive revenue like what we just talked about from external parts of the world. So for instance, some of the jurisdictions, what we'll talk about, the average income is $3,600 per year. Imagine if we said that there's actually a part of the world that says, we're not willing to adhere to the United Nations realities or the World Economic Forum dictates, or certain technologies that are just ramrodded, or maybe taxation, or maybe centralized systems. They're finally to a point where they're ready to stand up, stand on their own, and connect with what we're talking about with a digital ecosystem into a physical ecosystem. So those are, but notaries are a way to actually facilitate that. So you can have a cryptographic validation, you can have a visual validation, an interaction that ties to an ID, kind of like what Terrence just said, where, and I don't even know how they're going to get that. By the way, did you find that, Terrence? Yeah, right here. I'll go ahead.
He put a link in from 21. You know, they feel out the marketplace, so to speak, but I'm led to believe, yeah, it's in front of Parliament at the moment, so I'll find something more up to date.
They've also got other systems that they're implementing around the ID. I don't know if folks saw it, but the real ID, the one with the actual yellow star around it,
the multi-award-winning series.
We are engaging in a battle with a...
So what they're calling real ID, which is what they're trying to put at all the different airports, they've pushed that deadline out from 2023 to 2025 and then did a countdown timer on it. It's a very interesting, let's see if I can find it for you real fast.
We've got director's ID being implemented at the moment. You can't be a director of a company without a digital ID, and then they'll start pushing that down into contractors. And we have a Medicare system here, you know, the world's best social Medicare system, public system, and they're changing the card that you require to access this system. They're about to put RFID chips in those as well.
Yeah. You know, this, I don't know if these look familiar, but when you look at this gold certificate, I don't know if it ties to the same thing you're talking about, Terrence, but this is primarily what I was just mentioning. So instead of 2023, which, by the way, they've been trying to do this for almost 20 years now. The same entity behind the policy behind this system has been in the works for almost 20 years. This is the third time that they've pushed this real ID out. So it went 2 years out, 24 months more, which is basically 875 days from today. And the target is to basically replace this with a decentralized ID that is cryptographically proven. So in addition to being the RFID, they've got certain filaments and certain scanning. If you ever go through an airport, which, by the way, they're talking about it as a federal facility. So the checkpoints are becoming the different waypoints inside of airports and how they function, how they lock things down. That's where this control is coming. So the goal is, how can we build from a private standpoint that the whole world can basically standardize off of, a system where the individual can actually control their own ID, who they are, where they go, what they do, how they live, how they basically navigate, not just in the physical world or the digital world or the finance world, but how they manage their assets, how they manage their votes on different polls. All of that is basically, it's got to be in the hands of the individual and not central conglomerates. And we've got 875 days to build a system, to get it deployed, to get it facilitated for the masses, and to get it adopted. So those are the types of things that we've really been focusing on. Some of the things this last week, primarily because it involves large governments that are, I believe, have their hearts and minds and intents in the right place. And these governments have actually been full on hacked. Like literally when new leadership comes in, they've been completely taken offline when it talks about email systems, when you talk about facilitating basic governmental type transactions. Like imagine in, well, a lot of the technology when we talk about identity and marriage and voting is all done in the county level or in the province level. County level in the US, province level in Canada, or I would say it's probably, you guys have provinces in Australia, is that right, Terrence? Or any other folks that are on from Australia?
We have states under a federal government.
And the federal government, does that manage the ID, and does that manage marriages and voting?
No, well, the states do birth,
so
deaths, and marriages, and the federal government use the states to implement this and wash their hands of any responsibility at a federal level.
Yep.
To implement any of this stuff.
Okay, so you're basically, in Australia, it does the same thing as the US, where it basically takes that responsibility and puts it to the county or state level. In our world, the ID is at the state level. The voter rights and registration for polling, as well as for marriage, as well as even for healthcare related data, is actually at the county level. So it's even pushed down further. I believe that the founding fathers of the United States of America, when they created the first Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution, they intended for those rights and powers to be governed at the local level based upon the voice of the people. What they didn't count on, at least I personally believe, and this is, people can argue with this one way or the other, what they didn't count on is when the Declaration of Independence and the 56 signers that actually signed that, which there's a whole nother story on their lives or short lives, and in the Constitution, what they didn't understand is how Britain would then come back in and continue to basically take over, primarily from a monetary standpoint. And what we've seen is systems basically being taken over. They're not free, they're not independent. And if the world, especially the supposed free world, thinks that they're free within the system that's currently governing them, with a House, with a Senate, with a judiciary, with a supposed presidency that could be selected versus elected, or your ID and the different voting rights down to the county level, how can this type of an ID, because they'll tie voting to IDs eventually. Like even right now in the US, I don't know how it works in different countries, but the voting ability, you have to have a valid ID if you're going to do a physical ballot. If you're going to do a mail-in ballot, or if you're out of the country, like I was actually in New Zealand, voted for the President of America remotely. This was a couple campaigns ago. And I was like, this is not right. What they're doing is not right. The way they're validating it, make a long story short, the voting systems, the identity systems, the financial systems, and whether we're talking about banking or whether we're talking about insurance or title or any kind of asset management, those systems really need to be cryptographically proven. And if they're cryptographically proven and then notarized, now we've got a system that's actually worth standing up on. So I'll just continue to kind of walk through things that are important. I know I'm running out of time here. For those that are aware or not aware, until the end of the year, there's a 23% off. And I know that as we kind of launched the promo, and I'll talk a little bit about this, there's a new base image for all Clear phones, Freedom phones, and Armor phones. The base image includes Tesla and Twitter-based apps. And there's a backstory to it. I won't go through it right now. It's not appropriate. But basically, you'll see this site represents not just the 3 Clear phones with the 220 being sold out or the Armor phone being sold out, but you can actually see all different iterations of the phones and link to where they can actually be procured. The Clear phones are the only ones that will actually have 23% off through the end of this year. For those that actually had started selling, for instance, I think, Wally, there's some transactions that we need to follow up on that were full price that should have that discount. So you can actually use the 23% off as well as a referral ID, if that makes sense. So you can actually check out with a referral ID as well as a code, so to speak. So please be aware of that. The other thing that's important is the monthly fees are back. And this is based upon North America underwriting and the individual's credit. We don't ever get to know or see the credit or the numbers or Social Security. We don't do any of that. It's a third party, but this is back. So the ability to actually purchase with a low monthly credit, that's there. You need to know that subscriptions are going away. There's been so much abuse with them. We thought that people telling people would actually end up in the right thing, whether it was voice data text service or hardware software services as a subscription. We thought that people would actually be a little bit more, I don't know if loyal is the right word, but they would basically just do what they say they're going to do, because we don't do credit checks. So what I'm talking about, I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm talking about the ability, and actually they're already gone. So you'll see that subscriptions are basically removed from here. You can still get to them from ClearUnited.com, and then you click on products. You'll see that there's a toggle button here. At the end of the year, this is actually going to disappear. So this is primarily, here, I'll kind of scroll down. So you can kind of see you've got a purchase and a subscribe option. So this purchase is all that's really going to be there. Well, we need to, oh, looks like we're getting a couple of calls. But you can see the subscribe. These subscriptions are going to go away. So, and the other thing is, if you're already in a subscription, your price will not go up. It will actually be grandfathered as other prices go up. So if you remember, and I actually think I've got a slide on this. If you look at the pricing and really what we're accommodating to, it's not in here. Yeah, dang it. Well, the simple thing is there has to be a correction for this overshot that we bumped into. If and we're still working through this. The goal is to try and have this done by the end of the year. And what you're going to see is some shifts around some of these productizations to actually get that in line so there's not abuse. Those that are outside of the US, most of you this doesn't impact, but some it definitely does. And so anyways, so that's an additional update. And what I mean by that is primarily let's see if I can find it. It's primarily the Clear Store 23% off. So this is the update. This is only going to be good until the end of the year. So please, and for those that aren't aware, we were able to get the shipping to different countries massively down. UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. It's literally like even a very remote island, which I was surprised. We're talking $45 to go to absolutely the opposite side of the earth and probably far enough away from everything there, or from anything. It's only $45 to get it. So I'll stop blabbing on that, but you do need to be aware of that. There's some advancements inside of the system here. Let's see if I can. By the way, I want to say, Bob, did you get things set up where we were before so you can actually see those assets so I can send them to you? We had a task from 2 meetings ago.
Yes, I can see them now.
Okay. Oh, that's because we actually sent it to you, but we were going to do something else. We were going to add you as a member or something crazy. I'm going to log.
Yeah, you were going to send me. You were going to send me the last one, and then I can add it in to transfer ownership, so I'd be able to see it.
Perfect. For those that, let's see, I'm going to scan this. Hopefully that works. Login successful. So for those that are new, I use my phone to log in. And it basically can log into digital assets and the digital world, which has different things in it. So you're going to start seeing things on the left start popping up, whether it's, email, calendar, contacts, docs, sheets, disputes. I mean, there's tons of stuff that are going to continue there. But some of the differences that have been added is the ability to actually cryptographically start a business. In the normal world, they'd call this like a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. This is built in, the ability to create a business once the business is actually created. Like, for instance, this is one that Bob helped create a long ago. I want to see so you can see that there's assets that are created. So you can actually go in, there's new types of assets. So, and I don't know if I can zoom into this. Let's see if I can. Nope, I can't. Dang it. So the assets are a normal, oh boy. So you've got asset, that should actually be token, coin, infrastructure, NTF, reward, token. So no, they did it right. That's exactly right. So token's at the bottom. They alphabetized it. That's why it's different. So an asset is like real estate. So Bob, we actually created an entity that was a home. And then one of the other things that we're working through is kind of the legal process on title, you know, whether that's an owner policy, a buyer policy, a seller's policy, so that you can ensure the title transfer process of different things like assets, real estate, land, vehicles. And then imagine coins. These are kind of like for, you know, the folks that actually need to be paying attention, like if you were a public share, whether it's on a New Zealand stock exchange, a US stock exchange, Frankfurt, doesn't matter. But if you actually are selling a security as a digital asset, these are the types of things you got to be paying attention to. And it would tie to this class. The reason there's different classes because there's different workflows behind it. So it could automatically actually register with the Security and Exchange Commission if you're building a digital security and actually you were in the jurisdiction of the United States of America. So it can actually help you to stay in compliance, but do it cryptographically. So it may send documents off to the Security and Exchange Commissions to validate, but based upon a cryptographic key and a particular ID. Very important. And it's not just that, but other things such as commodities, currencies, equities. They're basically all tied to that. So that's actually different within the asset side of it. Within the organization side of it, this is also different. So literally an association, a benefit, a business, a community, a corporation, a country, okay, whole another conversation, a decentralized autonomous organization, a society, a special purpose entity, and a special purpose vehicle. These are actually very common assets in certain types of asset classes in the world, and then a digital trust. A digital trust is actually what Bob and myself created on this earlier, which is basically this entity here. One of the things we wanted to do, Bob, would you put an email address inside of the ClearOne system and maybe just send it over if you could? Karen, thanks for your message. I see it. We've actually got a good chunk of folks that are actually going through the audit process in your world. So we should be, Wally, can we take a task to have accounting basically bump that to a priority for Karen, please? We just need to get, that done and then back over. Thanks, Bob. I got that for you here. Two things that we could actually do. So I'm jumping back on topic. So this is adding a member. So we can go ahead and send this, or we can scan a QR code. So we're going to go ahead and submit it. Bob actually got a message that came from the digital world to add him if he follows a process to this organization. There's a couple things that you could do here. You've heard of basically purchase, or let's say you go and open a bank account and you have multiple signers. Well, you can have multiple different managers and multiple members and manager roles. So you can have a role where you can have multiple members or multiple managers that can actually sign a transaction before certain things can happen. So that's kind of the governance that we're starting that process. I just invited him to. It would, you know, if it would be different, actually, he could probably just scan that remotely. So Bob, why don't you try and do this? I sent you an email, but why don't you try and scan that? You can see my screen.
Should I scan it with ClearLife?
Yeah, so you go into ClearLife and you're going to click on the hamburger buns top left, go down to say scan at the bottom of your list, and then see if that scans for you. This will be interesting. I've actually never done it like this. There you go. So
it gave me invalid QR code.
Invalid QR code.
Yeah, that's what it said to me.
Wally, would you task me and Vikaz to troubleshoot that side of it? So in other words, we're in a remote session and he scanned it remotely with an invalid QR code. That'd be interesting to see. So basically adding members and adding assets and adding companies cryptographically. And then also, these are also new things as well. So we can come into this organization page here. So let's say that Bob wants to pass on assets to his posterity. and involve an attorney, but his posterity and the attorney aren't involved in anything around cryptography or Clear or the digital world at all. He could literally send this URL. So I'll go ahead and put this URL. I should probably put it, I'm going to try and put it in both mediums here. Oops. Yeah, that's good. So everyone should be able to see this URL. So this is a public example, or not example, but actually a cryptographic. So you can see that I'm a member. And then and notice that I've got a digital last name. So it doesn't actually show my full name. But you can see that there's actually, he's got an Atlantic City property here that is actually a trust, and there's 100 units to it, right? If I remember right, I think I retained 1 or 10 of them just so that I could hold the asset.
Yeah, you retained 1 of them.
Yeah, so once the goal is you basically come on as a director, right? And then if I'm pulling myself off, I would actually send that one to you, pull off, and then I wouldn't even be able to see that in my companies, organizations, or assets. You see how that works? So literally, and you can also upload documents, which I think, let's see you can manage files. So this is also new. So certificate of an incorporation, constitution, you can upload the files there. You can also, I'm going to come back in and see if I could, there's another feature in here that I'm missing. Yeah. There's a good standing document that basically ties to it, but you can kind of see, that should also have here. You'll be able to see the website as well, and then some data around that. The uptime, the MX record, the search capability, so kind of a ranking around the quality of it. There's a ton of data that will basically build a reputation, a digital reputation that will tie to a organization based upon the digital asset that it's based on. So it's not a physical address, it's a digital asset and address that actually ties to it that helps to build that reputation within that ecosystem. So I'll stop talking about that, but really that's a massively important part. I won't go through this right now because that's coming. I won't even go through those. This is a new section. So this goes through news. So a lot of the things that we're involved with different town halls, they'll go here. Other things that are going on in the general industry, different perspectives. If there's content that you feel is appropriate for events and things that are coming up, feel free to send it in. And, we'll basically just put a poll together and see if folks want to be involved with it. This is a continued, let's see if I've got enough cycles to go through this one. This is going to be a big topic here. It's probably best if I don't open this up, if I go to questions before I get into that one. Any thoughts, comments, questions before I move on?
Michael, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's Beck. How are you? So last week you mentioned that we could build out our ID from ClearUnited. So I went in and I started putting my details in there. So from the ClearUnited perspective, my information's in there. So what happens after that? Will there be a QR code expressed from that or something? Or how does all that work?
Can you be a little bit more specific as to what you did or filled out or?
So I went into ClearUnited and then there was options there for the vault, and then you put your identity and your cards, and I put my Clear card details in there and saved it.
That's going to be a combination of an extension inside the browser. This is probably
okay. Yeah.
So it's I just transitioned off of. So imagine an extension that allows you to actually use a QR code to log in, and then it links that browser with your username, passwords, logins to your actual decentralized storage that's validated by your phone and your finger at a particular time. So if you want to log into a website or make a payment, sometimes if you have an Apple device, you can actually put your finger on your laptop. What this does is it shifts it. It uses a technology called FIDO and actually shifts it to your decentralized keys combined with your phone, combined with your finger in a certain space and time. So it's like literally 4 or 5 factor authentication, something you have, something you do, something you are in a certain time. So it's literally logging you in. And the way that it'll work is it's actually an extension that sits up in here. So you can kind of see, I'll pull this over here real quick. You can kind of see these are other extensions. And I'm actually on a PC that doesn't have the latest code on that. Wally, could you task me and Tyler with demoing or showing how ClearID works as far as the login goes for Becca? Because once she sees it, it's going to be like, I get it. It's beautiful. But right now,
yeah, I get the idea, and I put my details in, but I was just like, what is the, like, is there a, like, am I going to be able to, in the future, am I going to be able to scan that somewhere?
Yeah.
And is it going to be, like, will it be able to identify me even if it was on another blockchain?
So this basically, don't think about change, think about authentication. Where the change come in is the storage and the ID that's encrypted to you. So
okay, yeah, all right.
The user experience will go like, you click on a button, and then it says, do you want to log in? Then you click you actually pull open your ClearID, you scan it, and then it synchronizes your phone and that PC's web browser experience. Okay. And then it opens up a vault, and we'll go ahead and demo it, because once you see it, it's like, oh, that's cool. And that's basically where that's at. So good question. Really good question. Other thoughts, comments, feedback?
Michael, is that any browser, or does it have to be the Clear Web browser?
Any Chromium browser that basically can have third-party extensions. So Brave, Firefox, Chrome, as well as Clear Web. All 4 of those browsers are going to be supported. You know, it depends on what version of them too, but basically those 4 browsers, because they all tie back to Chromium. Chromium is actually an open source technology that all of this different tech's built on. You know, some of the things that are going to be, you know, work or not work are SSL certs. So SSL certs are another thing that countries actually manage. Most people don't know that. IMEI numbers is also the same type of thing. Even though there's a governing body worldwide, for instance, if you want to have a certain website that's approved within China, those SSL keys from the top level SSL provider, secure socket lay provider, actually have provided those keys. And that's why key management is actually the name of all of this. It's how all of this works. Secure key management and rotation, and how derived keys are created, is what makes the digital world ultimately very secure and very unique from any other system in the world. I personally have friends in this same county that started one of the biggest top-level domain SSL cert providers in the world, and then sold it. And then the company they sold it to sold out to China and many others, like Symantec, GoDaddy, Network Solutions. These are all top-level providers that are, you know, they basically sell URLs, but there's also third parties that tie to that, like VeriSign, which is Symantec, that basically sell the SSL certs, which you can also buy from the top-level providers, to then create an encrypted environment within the browsers. So it's like, well, what actually says that's valid or not? What makes it so that warning sign doesn't go away? I'll see if I can provide an example. I'm just going to go to app.clear. Oh, it's already working. So I'm looking for an error, believe it or not, but it's actually showing that it's actually secure. So it sees that the certificate's valid, but behind the certificate is actually what I'm talking about. So how this actually gets issued and who actually trusts it or doesn't trust it, that's specifically what I'm talking about. These are actually secret combinations that do own the encryption behind these. But based upon what country you're in, you can actually see how they get signed or don't sign. So, but the browser is such a very important part of that. Yeah, so I'll stop blabbing there. Other thoughts, comments, feedback?
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
So I don't know if you heard the news, but did you hear what BC and Saskatchewan, the two provinces, did in Canada?
No.
What they're doing. I'm on a couple of other platforms, but I'm on a platform called Novatech. I don't know if you've heard of them. They do Forex and crypto trading. And you purchase a package with either Litecoin, Bitcoin, USDT, or Ethereum, and then they trade, and then you get between 2% and 4% weekly, and you can compound it and whatever. So British Columbia and Saskatchewan.
My question would be, who owns the actual asset and keys? But go ahead. So go ahead.
Well, if you leave it on the platform, it's not you that owns it. So
yeah, but that's a warning sign, because that's kind of like what the FTX stuff did. FTX went 5 levels deeper than that. But go ahead and tell us what's going on with the provinces there.
Well, so British Columbia and Saskatchewan passed a law that you're not allowed to. Oh, it's also a network marketing company if you want. There's a network marketing aspect, and so now you're not allowed to recruit anybody in those two provinces. So you're grandfathered in if you're already on the platform. You can stay on the platform, but otherwise, so they're just starting to clamp down everywhere now. I mean, I'm not shocked, but I'm shocked.
You know, what's interesting is when they can control the media, so advertising, commercials, shows, and influence people's buying decisions, or at least habits or exposure to certain brands. When they can control that, the biggest threat is actually people telling people, just like what you're talking about, whether you're talking about direct sales, multi-level marketing, any of these types of where people are telling people. And what's sad is it's not just there in Canada. I mean, we have certain trade commissions in the US that also try. I mean, it was about 2 years ago that we got a letter, and they just sent the same letter to everybody, shot across the bow, whether they don't dig into it. But the point is I understand if there's something wrong, if there's basically, and kind of like what this ecosystem, imagine if people are paying in, but they don't actually own the asset, and they sell the asset in multiple different ways, there can be some liability that's there. So I can understand protecting the consumer that way. But people telling people, and people being able to make a living based upon people telling people, there is nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, the first couple times when people came to me and said, these are internal or contractors, when we said, how do we drive the awareness of a decentralized phone? It was, you have people telling people. The first 2 times, and those of you may not know this, I actually said, that doesn't feel right. We can't do that. We don't, I'm in Utah, and I've been around certain direct sales organizations, and I just was like, no, that's just, you can't do it. And someone very intelligent asked me, says, why? What is the real problem? And when you start digging into it, people telling people, like, look at how many people are on this call religiously, like consistently, like to the minute. It's like we show up, we assemble, we collaborate, we share knowledge, we share questions, we divide and break, and then we go share that with our friends, our colleagues.
But they don't want that.
Right.
They don't want us to do that. That's why they did the lockdowns. They didn't want people getting together to talk about what a fake, sorry, I didn't mean. No, I'm
No,
I see you're very, very careful about what you say, so I should.
But it's straight up. You're talking truth, because there's really two ways to get a word out. You use the existing centralized media systems, or you use a decentralized people telling people process. And we all are connected to other people. And we really believe that if some of these analogies, and I don't know if I've got a slide here. I don't think I do. Let me just see what else I've got here. Dang it, usually I've got a good deck up that I can bounce to. Getting some good tunes in the background there. Yeah, here we go. This will have a slide up for it. So if we're really talking about, and I'll actually just pull it over here. If we really believe that there are secret combinations inside of different categories, finance, tech, insurance, media, health, pharmaceuticals, and all
every one of them.
You got it. And if we actually believe that, what's to stop them from cross-pollinating and joining together and then actually going in and taking over a government? I personally believe that is what's happened.
They have already taken over the governments all over the world. That's not
Brazil.
an if.
Yeah, exactly. Look at Brazil. Look at Ukraine. Look at, I shouldn't say that one, not right now. You name any country. I mean, I don't want to say that Russia hasn't been.
Canada. Look at Canada.
Any of the Commonwealths are just hook, line, and sinker. You know, New Zealand, Australia. Canada. What's interesting is there's also a lot of different British islands. So I'll pull up a little map here. So how many of these different ecosystems are self-governing territories that tie to what we're talking about or not? So can you tell me that parliament or tribes or councils or presidencies or whatever judiciary system they're using in these islands here, or
I lived in Turks and Caicos for 15 years.
Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like that's like what? So since 1946, population almost 46,000 people, small little island, but they have their own governance, right?
Well, they're controlled by the Brits, but yeah, they think they have their own government.
I would argue that every single entity on this map thinks that they control their own ecosystem. But when you really look at the software, the financial systems, the voting systems, all of these basically use the same process, right? But what if a couple of them actually said, you know what, we're going to stand up and we're going to do what's right?
And why don't they? Why don't they?
I personally believe all of us have goodness in us. But collectively, when money, greed, pride is sprinkled into it, with secret combinations that are trying to control, it's very difficult for that good to come out. But I really have massive amounts of faith that there are going to be some, and it's going to be on this map. It may not be a name that's shown. It may be a little dot. But imagine if one of these little dots with just a couple thousand people, couple 100,000 people. I mean, if you lived in Turks and Caicos, that's one of the smallest ones that are out there.
Yes, it is.
Right? I mean, Gibraltar is a little small as well. But the point that I'm driving at is, notice where this map is coming from. This is from the United Nations. They round them up, they control them, and they're targeting them. And not only that, they say, hey, you're so small that we actually think we can target you and influence you. Why? With our money. And where does the United Nations get their money? So if we go back over to this map and we look at these secret combinations, if these different secret combinations can actually control governments, the combination of governments, IMF, a couple other entities, they can create currencies, something out of nothing. And there's on ledger, off ledger, private and public type of, and that's why there's this private and public, because there's different types of transactions. So for instance, let's say that Bob wants to go get a mortgage for this entity that he just created, right? And let's say that the title company, the title insurance companies, the mortgage companies would all say that cryptography is something that they want to use to validate an asset. And he actually applies and he jumps through all of the tape that I believe these different organizations have put in place, primarily around how do you actually get a mortgage? Are you a good slave? Have you actually conformed in the right way? Do you do these paperwork in the right way? Does your money flow in the right way? And if so, good person. Here's your mortgage. And that mortgage is basically then issued as an asset inside of his bank account that then goes to the title company, that then goes to the house or the people that built the house or made the house, right? Or selling the house. But the point is that money inside that bank account, do you think the Federal Reserve just created it? Or do you think that bank was authorized based upon the compliance of the slavery process to basically pop that money inside of his account? And then the ratios of liquidity has to be 10 to 1. And that's where we get fractional bank lending and all these other stuff. But the point that I'm driving at is, what if these ecosystems, like let's say that these private secret combinations can control government, that then can create money, that then through the IMF and other ecosystems can fund organizations like this or the World Economic Forum, and then they basically go into different countries and they can actually focus on saying, hey, because by the way, these are the loose cannons right here. They're non-self-governing territories. They are the loose cannons. There's one other article I think is really important for us to review. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find it.
We invited the best from all over the world. We either won the show or nearly won the show.
I'm getting some feedback on one of the channels. 60 more seconds. If I can't find it, we'll move on. It's such an important, but the.
Can I ask you something?
Always.
You know the whole FTX scandal.
Yep.
There's a lot of really intelligent people that were in FTX. How come they kept their money in there and not in
control the asset?
Cold wallets, or why did they own their own keys? I don't understand that. There's some pretty intelligent people that were involved in FTX.
It's really simple. It's greed.
But what do you mean it's greed?
And it's convenience. So, for instance, you know how they trap pigs and they basically just put food down and the pigs come and eat?
Oh, God, don't tell me that.
And then they let them go again.
Okay.
And then the next day they put the food down. By the way, we've got a lot of snow here, like feet and feet. At least where I'm at, we probably have 1.5 feet, maybe more. And I go out and feed the pigs every night, the sheeps every night, and the dog, and like you can call them just like a dog. You can call them, they come, but they get used to being fed. And when the feed is not taken away, they just continue to come back until, like in I'll be specific, in Texas they do a lot of boar hunting. And the way that they get these pigs to these certain areas, and then like a neighbor of mine actually flies helicopters and they go around and take folks and shoot them. I totally disagree. I actually think we are here to be stewards over these animals. We are here. They are gifts to us. Should we eat them? Maybe in a time where we have to. It's like famine. But I don't know about you, but I feel like $100. My mind works clear when I just don't eat things that actually may have some type of a negative connotation. I'll leave that for a separate conversation because as it's a health topic, which I think ties to a spiritual topic, which I think ties to a fiduciary topic of how we are humans here on earth and sharing one world, one people. But ultimately, when we talk about animals and we talk about humans, there's not much difference in how our minds work. And so this analogy of a pig continuing to get fed It's the same thing that happened. They got sloppy. So the next thing you know, they're all in one area with a lot of liability. And the venture folks, believe it or not, they're not that smart. As a matter of fact,
I was just blown away. I was just blown
same,
away by that.
50% of the venture funds that are in there, I've personally been in their offices over the last 2 decades. And most people don't know this, but venture capitalists, VCs, they've only been around for about 55 years. It's a business model that's actually, and same thing with stock markets, a couple hundred years. When you look at how financial systems are created, and these are all centrally managed and centrally governed. And that's why decentralization is an answer to the reality that we're all faced with. If you can give different entities their own ability to create organizations, and those organizations can then create assets, and those assets can then be backed based upon proof. Now we're talking about a use case that humanity can actually get behind.
Okay, so I'm still not getting the whole digital world, create your own assets. Start your own business, create your own assets. So where can I go and learn about that? I want to understand it. I want to understand it.
So all of these pages that I walk you through here, these are brand new pages. So for instance, certain news. This is a presentation, 30-minute presentation, probably the simplest way I've tried to explain it. But ultimately, you're going to start seeing a lot of content that you don't have current access to see.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
This is a page that's very important, very detailed, but you can't actually go and spell it out, so to speak. Can you log in and create an organization and these different types of entities? You can today with your Clear phone or Clear Life on any kind of Android phone. That all works today. Does it make sense to people? No, but have you started a business? Have you actually incorporated? Why do you incorporate? What is a business? A business is a living entity, just like us as individuals. And they're governed in such a way where, for instance, we're talking about this entity here with NJ, so New Jersey Holdings, and we talked about these members sending off an invite and being able to add more different managers to this. And then managers can come and go. So imagine, a parent has a fiduciary responsibility over a child when they bring that child into the world. Well, imagine individuals that are cryptographically proven. So do we actually need to know the parent's name? Or do we know that there's actually a child there that gets its own name? It gets its own reputation, its own identity, its own, in the world's way, its own birth certificate that actually has, and I would challenge you to go and look at birth certificates and see what the mother's name is when they actually sign those birth certificates when that child's brought into it. It's called an informant. The mother is actually an informant. Is that crazy?
That is crazy.
So it's the same type of thing when a mother and a father come together and create a child that actually then has its own ability to provide value or be enslaved, which is a different conversation. When you change that responsibility and you tie it into an organization that can then be created in different types that hold different assets. So for instance, let's go back in and let's go say I want to create an asset here. These different asset classes then have a workflow behind them that basically can tie to a use case. So it's really simple. You have an individual that validates who they are. That individual can cryptographically create an entity or an organization that can create an asset. And if assets are created and owned by the individuals or organizations or both and cryptographically seen, but we don't have to spell out the names, what that means.
I love it. I love that whole where, I was getting on and I was trying to sign up for something and they wanted all this information about me. And I said, no, I decided not to do it because I don't want to give my birth date anymore. I don't want to give my address. I don't want to give any of my information away.
And what's sad is, most people would say, well, if you don't do anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. But that's not really the case. For instance, you're up in Canada. Up in Canada in 2022, the same year, truckers said, you know what, we're going to try and do what's right.
Yep.
We're going to go and spend our own time, our own money, our own vehicles, or maybe it's
peacefully.
They were not hurting a soul, right? And you know who actually, so they go and basically say, enough with these vaccinations, enough with these closures, enough with this COVID nightmare, which is a man, you know, I want to get into that. So they said enough, and they go and protest. And then people like you and others and myself say, hey, we're going to support them. The least we can do is say, you know what, I'm going to give them $10. I'm going to give them $100. They did 3 or 4 different donations. Now, this is not they're selling product. This is not direct. This is people donating.
My husband and I donated, and then we went and got all our money out because they started freezing everybody's bank accounts.
And not only that, but they actually started showing up at doors, knocking on people's doors. We noticed that not only did you donate, and we locked up their funds. So your money that you sent to them, they can't get. Your money in your bank account, you can't get. And then they show up at your door. Now you tell me, do you feel free? And we're talking about a simple symptom of a reality that's just starting to rear its ugly head. I'm going to pull up. Give me a couple seconds here.
And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but they also were cleaning up the streets in Ottawa. They were feeding the homeless. They were having events for the children. I mean, what they did during those 2-3 weeks was absolutely, they were bringing people together.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
They weren't hurting people at all.
No.
Productivity has already been flushed down the toilet with what we call COVID. I'm going to pull up a real quick video. I don't know if this is going to spark thoughts or comments, but I do think it's important for us to at least be aware of. Because remember, we've talked about an attack on the individual, an attack on the family, an attack on relationships within the family, whole nother conversation, an attack on this beautiful earth that we get to float around in the universe on. I'm just going to play this real fast. Oh, you know what? I'm in a browser. You probably can't. I'm going to jump into a different browser before I do that.
I think I saw this. Michael, starting in January, I'd like to. I'm in Zooms all day long, and I would like to get my team on, is it ClearMeets? Can we do that if they don't have a Clear phone?
Yeah, they can. So basically, they can log. Here, I'll even show you where you go. So, well,
I don't want to use Zoom anymore.
You just go to app.clear.one.
Okay.
And everybody can basically get off of Zoom. Same features and functions. We're all using it here. Nothing to install, nothing to track, nothing to own. It's your data, it's your recordings, it's your transcripts. Super simple. I mean, that's the way it should be. But I'm just going to play this and kind of, if you start seeing what's happening to society, we're talking about, I'm going to jump back over here. We're talking about humanity that is under attack. We're seeing, I went through an interview of a candidate and this last week, and it was 16 kids in a family. Then the next generation was 8. Then the next generation was 4. And this individual was 0. And I was like, that you talk about that, then you talk about what they're doing. And I'll just say with seeds, okay? Because we already know what's happening with vegetables and fruits and monocropping and with Roundup. What does it do to the actual product? How does it make it so that the seeds don't actually germinate again? And then you can modify the seeds along the way. Seeds are really the same thing as what they're doing with humans. And this is kind of the next step. Here we go.
Introducing Ectolife, the world's first artificial womb facility, powered entirely by renewable energy. Ectolife allows infertile couple to conceive a baby and become the true biological parents of their own offspring. It's a perfect solution for women who had their uterus surgically removed due to cancer or other complications. With Ectolife, premature births and C-sections will be a thing of the past. Ectolife is designed to help countries that are suffering from severe population decline, including Japan, Bulgaria, South Korea, and many others. The facility features 75 highly equipped labs. Each state-of-the-art lab can accommodate up to 400 growth pods or artificial wombs. Every pod is designed to replicate the exact conditions that exist inside the mother's uterus. A single building can incubate up to 30,000 lab-grown babies per year. Ectolife allows your baby to develop in an infection-free environment. The pods are made of materials that prevent germs from sticking to their surfaces. Every growth pod features sensors that can monitor your baby's vital signs, including heartbeat, temperature, blood pressure.
There's certain things, I'll just stop there. There's certain things that, I don't know if you heard that. Did you guys hear that okay?
I'm disgusted.
So yeah, there's certain things in life that we can, for instance, cloning is something we probably should never touch as humanity. Working with these germs, the actual what we call germs is a natural part of the world. We call what we're doing with oil, and notice how they talked about renewable energy. It's so important to get renewable energy into there because it's going to tie to a whole nother topic around, global warming, supply. But like I remember meeting face-to-face with John Kerry and saying, I just flat disagree with you. We're not dealing with the heat issue. Yes, does the earth get warm and cold? And yes, it does. But we're not dealing with an energy issue. And as a matter of fact, real energy, ambient energy, it actually doesn't have heat that comes off of it. I've personally seen with my own eyes tungsten incinerated off of human created or organized lightning inside of atmosphere. So imagine if we could see lightning and control it, it's plasma, and then you put tungsten, the hardest asset inside of it, and actually see it incinerate, and you have a heat gun that's testing the temperature. In real time, it's at room temperature. That is like almost an unmeasurable power. Like, for instance, have we ever questioned, why does the world turn? We ever question that? We ever question when we have a surface and then a mountain, how the clouds congregate, and then it goes, the actual asset, like one of the best assets we've ever been given, we create this stuff, water, right? When you actually see water go change its molecular structure from liquid to an oxygen or a gas back down to a solid or a liquid, solid turns in when it just gets frozen. For instance, do you see a lot of lightning inside of storms that are dropping frozen water or snow or sleet or hail? No, you see it when it's going to liquid. Why is it that the earth turns and then these systems that clean the earth, clouds, pulls water from a liquid to a gas, and then when it drops it, it creates lightning? Where does that lightning come from? We all say, well, it looks like it comes from the cloud down to the ground. People say, no, it goes from the ground up. It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's basically creating a form of energy that is actually, can we capture that? All we have to do, again, when we talk about decentralization being a true and correct principle, all we have to do is look up through the telescopes and down through the microscopes, and we see it. We see it in the universe. We see it in the cellular layer. Decentralization. We just talked about humanity, messing with one of the most God-given gifts on earth, the ability to procreate, the ability to duplicate in our own image. These simple truths we shouldn't mess with. And decentralization, I believe, is the answer to remove these secret combinations. I don't know if I've got that slide up. The secret combinations from the ability to literally control everything. because, and I said this in February or January of 2020. Maybe it was 2000. What was the first? So I was in China in 2019. COVID came out the first quarter of 2020, right? Or am I off a year? I think that's the case. So we're talking like 30 to 60 days after the world starts pressing these panic buttons with a global pandemic. And my message, and I can even find it, or for those of you that are connected with me on Facebook, go back and find it. Because I basically made a statement that was, this is not about a virus. It's about a financial reset and digital control. And I would say it's the same exact thing that we're dealing with right now. And you know what? This control thing ends in literally 875 days. And if we don't actually offer a solution to humanity that is not centrally controlled, we will not be able to move, to live on this beautiful planet that we get the opportunity to live on, to travel. We've already seen what happens when you don't get vaccinated. And people can have their own choice around if a vaccination is good or bad for them. I'm on a lot of channels, and I just, I don't want to use certain words. So you can, if you're still trying to figure that one out, well, it's sad to see what others would allow done to another. If we talk about this equality topic, for instance, I just saw, let me see if I can find an article on this one. This is someone, and this ties to a comment that I made last week. And I hope that I don't touch on the wrong chord with this, because there are people here that I love, and they just have different choices. But here's an example of, someone that basically made a comment. This comment right here.
It's just as impossible for men to become lesbian as it is for men to become pregnant. Jevgen wrote, men are men regardless of their sexual fetishes.
So I don't know if you can, I track stuff that reads like that. I don't know if that made any sense to you. But my point is this individual is looking at 3 years in prison, in Norwegian prisons, for making that comment. Now, this is an individual herself who has an identity that's different than it's the same identity. She just likes a different way. The point is it's not what's right or it's wrong. It's about love. It's about acceptance, right? So if we're talking about attacking the identity and the individual and who they are, then this reality of this control topic becomes very, very important. Because if you don't comply with the agenda, for instance, this is someone this is a country that's pretty well structured. I got a ton of respect for the country that they're in, but this is an individual that's looking at 3 years in prison for making a statement on a personal platform. And 3 years is that's life, that's time, that's 3 years gone. So my point is on this other side of centralized control, identity, finance, marriage, health/vaccination, do you have a choice? It's up to people to choose, but do you have a choice is the question. Down to assets, down to generational wealth going from one generation to another. My great grandfather worked hard. He was born in Greece on a little island by Turkey. It was actually, when he was born, it was actually Greece. Now it's Turkey. The Turks invaded, killed his mom, killed his younger sister. Him and 2 or 3 other siblings moved to Athens, then moved to the US. He worked hard. He came here with nothing. And when he died, he had tons of real estate, many, many millions. And is it about the millions? No, it's not about the money. It's about working for future generations. And one thing I love, let's see if I can find this chart again. Dang it. Well, One thing I love about certain countries that understand life, that we're all visitors here as one world, one people, and we have a stewardship not only over the other species that are here, but the earth in general. And is the earth here to be used and abused from the resources that it gives to us? You know, the different, you talk about it from the periodic table of elements: gold, lithium, iron, phosphate, silver, platinum, uranium, coal, oil, you know, carbon. There's tons of gifts that we've been given. Are we good stewards over those? Are we just using and abusing powers to enslave a different class? Is there a different class? Or are we all equal? We talk about these civil rights. We talk about the UN providing value for civil rights. I'll see if I can find this again. It's just, there is no class distinction. There is no class difference. We are one world and one people. And sooner or later, we'll either figure that out and look at what we've done to society when we've lost it, or we'll figure it out and we will unite and come together and enable it. And it doesn't take a lot of people. As a matter of fact, sometimes great things happen with very small populations, with very small countries that identify as a country under God, and in God we trust. I would ask you to question how many countries out there today actually have that motto. In the United States of America, let's see if I've got, on the dollar, it actually says, "In God we trust." How many other countries believe that same sentiment? And then how many individuals in those countries feel like they're actually under God or they're under a government? So with that being said, it reminds me of a song. Jimmy Levy, amazing dude, Under God. I think I'm not saying it right, but we'll see if we can find it here. Boy, that's a gorgeous song here. I love that one. We'll watch this one and then we'll go to do another one. Here we go. We're wrapping up here. Actually, before we start that, any questions before we jump into this final message? Thoughts, comments, anything? This actually ties to the truckers here, so this very appropriate song. Okay, I'll give you 2 more seconds. If no other comments, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay, we'll go ahead and jump back here.
Without God, they want you locked in your home. Without God and alone, don't want you looking up Dr. Sebi and Robert Malone. The truth blocked on your phone. They call the shots from their throne. These politicians and these doctors, they are not in control. Jimmy, uncover the face that the Lord created so it can be seen. Tired of the fake trending all over the place. We just want to be free. There's no fear of faith is praising, still we're hiding underneath all the passive threats and trauma that came from this tyranny. We won't bow down to the golden cow and do as it pleases. We don't care what they say, it's God over the government. Won't have it any other way, it's God over the government. And we just don't understand.